Welcome back to Old Guy REI. Mikey and I are here again this week to discuss the highlights of our last Wednesday Zoom accountability call. And we talked about a lot of different things. So we'll get started with the highlights. Mikey, there was a couple of people talking about crime maps, and some people were saying that they didn't put too much weight into the actual crime maps online. How do you feel about that? Do you look at crime maps when you're researching properties?
Yeah, I learned this through Dion's members when they do the deal reviews, and they have used Spot Crime. So I've used that a lot actually. And a good thing is, Dion had mentioned McKinley Avenue, I believe,
Mhm.
as a really bad spot. So what I did was I used Spot Crime on McKinley Avenue. I printed that out into a PDF. So I used that as a comparison to places I'm looking at just as a reference. I don't know how accurate it is. And the other thing I like about Spot Crime is you can list your property and then you can get alerts of either, from a 1 mile radius to I think a 5 mile radius. And you get alerts through email of the activity in that area for crime. And you had also taught me about Door Profit, which I also like.
Yeah, Door Profit is another good one. There's a few others out there if you do a quick Google search. But the other thing that we talked about on that subject was like we do the crime maps as well, but once we zero in on a property or something, we'll reach out to a property manager or an agent in the area and get their input as well. Because, like Santiago was saying, if we Google our own addresses, we can see crime all around us wherever we live, and we live in places where we feel safe and don't actually feel like there's that much crime around us. So that was a good point. And then a lot of good stuff came up. We heard that CJ had done the binder strategy successfully on one of his properties, so that was cool. You haven't had the opportunity for a binder strategy yet, have you?
I have it, no, unfortunately.
Yeah, neither have we. But we are trying to. I have brought it up with some of our property managers, and a few of them do a similar thing. They'll when leases are coming due, they'll gather some what they call CMAs, current market analysis, and that way they can share with the tenant what current market rent is, and if they moved, what they would be facing. So that's been helpful. Um, Jeffrey was talking about having to get one of his properties, the wiring reworked, and a really good one. Jacob, who's fairly new to the group, had asked about when do you know if you're ready to get started, and what would you what would you think would be some of the first things you need to do to realize when you're ready to go?
I would say I would consume as much content as I possibly could, whether it's ORAT, starting with that course, at least kind of learning your market for 6 months, 3 to 6 months, then having Dion's content, Mass content, Millennium Mike's content, and just kind of going through all of that, immersing yourself with as much content as you can consume. And then at the same time, just researching your market, networking with, realtors, lenders, mortgage insurance brokers, and just try to cast a wide net and then try to filter it down so that you can analyze all the data and come to a point where, okay, now I've set everything up, let's start shopping.
Yeah, I think the group touched on a lot of those suggestions that you made. The other thing that we let him know too is that if he gets to the point where he's analyzing properties and he might be looking at a deal, he can always bring the deal to the group. Like, um, and we can go over the analyzation with him, probably have some suggestions or bring up some points where he might have forgotten to include this or that. So that was helpful. And another topic that came up that's kind of related to that is Michael was asking, how long should you study a market before you switch markets? If I think he's been analyzing in his market for close to a year. And Chester brought up some good points about things that wondering if he tried switching asset classes. You know, if he's only been looking for single family homes in his market, maybe a duplex or a quad would work better. I know Dion has mentioned that in his market that single families don't work there. So that's why he went to duplexes to start. And then more electrical work. Basilio was gonna get a service panel upgrade on one of his properties. Somebody also brought up, as far as knowing when to get started, to keep in mind your exit strategy. And I think that, to me, that seems like it applies more like if you're looking for a short-term rental, right? So if you're looking for a short-term or mid-term rental, and those typically will help a deal make money. But if that doesn't work, will a standard rental work, or is it going to mean you're going to have to sell the property? You know, we've heard people talk about that before.
And I wanted to quickly touch on Basilio. He was talking about the panels, the Federal Pacific panels. Could you kind of talk about, because I was learning when he was talking, I'm not too familiar with that. And could you kind of give a quick background on that?
Yeah, there are a couple old brands, Federal Pacific being one, that as they age, the breakers don't work very well anymore. They're hard to get parts for, so you can't easily upgrade the breakers. There's a couple of other brands that are slipping my mind right now, but it is good to upgrade to newer stuff. Square D is a modern brand that everybody uses. So that's it. After a while, sometimes the breakers get weak and they'll just trip on their own. We had one, in fact, on the job we just finished. One of the breakers kept tripping and we thought something was wired incorrectly. But when I pulled the breaker out, it was just really soft. It wouldn't even stay on by itself when it was out of the panel. So luckily on that one, we were able to replace the breaker and that solved the issue.
Nice.
But yeah, it's here. It could cost, things have gone up a bit, but I would say 3,000 to 5,000 if you're going to upgrade the panel. And we talked a little bit about not just changing the brand, but upgrading in size as well. If you get a new panel, you might as well go a little bit bigger. It'll give you a few more options to add more breakers, more circuits to your house if you need to. So that's another benefit of upgrading. What did you think about Lynn and Chan? Were sharing a lot of their journey so far. They're in Minnesota. They bought a duplex, and they're the ones who I mentioned in the beginning that were sharing some stuff with us that a lot of people might not feel comfortable sharing. But I was glad that they brought it up. What did you think?
That was so good to hear. And when Jacob had asked that question, and then Lynn and Chan had said, "You're never ready for that first one." And I completely agree with that. That was such informative because they also went through all the experiences that they've been going through. And even for me, when I bought my first one and it was a turnkey, it really wasn't, because there was a lot of other stuff that came up and problems I had to face. So I related a lot to what they were talking about.
Yeah, they were sharing things like they went to get a permit for something, and when they did that, the inspector brought to their attention that there was electrical work done in the home that didn't have a permit. So now they have to go through the process of getting that electrical corrected to satisfy the permit and get it signed off. And I know from personal experience, the home was remodeled when they bought it, and the I don't know if it was a flipper or previous owner, they remodeled the whole house, but in one bathroom, they left an old bathtub in there, and it was a yellow bathtub with all new tile and everything. So Chan went and he refinished the bathtub, and that made everything right. And they've got tenants in there now. Things are moving forward, but there are always challenges. And, we always talk about reserves. That's super important.
And they're continuing to level up. They had joined Matt's boot camp and their course members too. So I see them everywhere, and it's just great to see people continuing to grow.
Yeah, we got to meet them in Vegas last February. That it is super exciting to watch what they're getting to do now. Uh, some of the other well, one of the other things that came up in on the call was about recasting mortgages, and Anna gave us a lot of good information about that. And that's one of the things we've learned recently. I had never heard about it before. Did you know that that was an option?
I first heard it from Dion, and it opened my mind because I had even reached out to the lender on my first property, and I had just requested a recast documents, and they sent it right over. Like, it was no big deal. I didn't have to talk to anyone. I just called them on the phone and just requested the paperwork. So I'm kind of looking over that now.
Okay, great. Yeah, it is an option for down the road. I think if you have a property for a few years, from what I understand, if you go to recast, sometimes the mortgage company would ask you for a large down payment, like $10,000. Um, but they don't change your mortgage rate. They just extend it back out to 30 years, and that could lower your payment. So I think that's something we're looking forward to doing in the future.
Yeah, I wish more lenders would talk about that more, because it seemed so automatic when I just requested it, but they don't really kind of outwardly tell you about this option. So I wish that was more kind of a known thing.
Yeah, you and I talked before about that with working with Brian. He's always trying to bring us more information, which is very unusual because, like you said, unless you call and ask specifically about something, they'll tell you, but you don't have I don't know, you don't have a good resource that will walk you through the whole lending process and explain everything in detail so we can make better decisions. So Brian's been a great asset. We'll put his information in the video as well.
Yep.
And speaking of that, we were talking about these T-shirts. We started to take pre-orders for the new ORAT T-shirts. Thanks for wearing the old guy merchandise. So there's a video out about the T-shirts, but just real quick, we're selling these T-shirts, hoping to sell 100 of them in the next couple of months. And if we are able to do that, then the proceeds will go to Zuber, and he'll be presenting it to the Blind Center as a donation. If we sell 100, that should give us a nice round $1,000 to give to him. But like you mentioned earlier, it's a nice T-shirt. It's actual silk screen with ink, not an iron-on transfer. This is the front. Then the back looks like this.
Oh, Dreamcatcher.
Yeah. So everybody seems to like it so far. Hopefully we'll start pulling in a few orders. But with that said, we were able to establish a PayPal payment link. So we'll post that also in the description, and you'll be able to order through that link, and it'll give us all your shipping information and everything. So we'll know where to send the shirts. But also we need to wait until we get most of the orders, like I would say 80 or 90% of the orders, before we actually send it to the printer to get the shirts made. We didn't want to, just go buy 100 shirts and then have all these weird sizes that people couldn't use. So I think this way will work out better.
Okay. And $30, sizes from S to XXXL. And I think Mark, Financial Firefighter, had asked if you have kid sizes available.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't opt for an extra small because the design didn't work with that size. It looks good on a small, but going with a smaller T-shirt, it probably would be a little distorted.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for going over the highlights of last week's meeting. We'll get that posted as quick as we can, and we'll do it again next week.
All right. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Mikey.